Welcome everyone to the thedad77 podcast. This is episode 6. Again, my name is Kerry Briggs. My background is in medical field, as well as I have a degree in Bible and religion. If you want to know more of who I am, then you'll have to go back to the first podcast, and it will tell you a whole lot more about who I am and about this channel. So the main purpose of this channel is to do Bible study, but we'll also do some other stuff that I like to call the dad stuff, and that's kind of where we're at today. And then occasionally we will do some lure creating and painting, one of my passions, period. So to begin today, I'm looking at choice, choose, chose, chosen, these words, and we're going to look at it a little bit in the Bible. But I had something come up. Sometimes when you're driving, you just have some thoughts, and thoughts kind of started rolling around in my head. And then it kind of snowballed and progressed, and it had to do with choosing and making choices. And we make all kinds of choices every day. You made a choice at what time to get up today. Most of you. Some of you just, it happened. But most of the time we choose anything from little bitty things like, what are we going to eat? What are we going to do today? Are we going to go do anything? Are we going to stay home? Are we going to clean the house? Are we going to go to work? Are we going to go fishing? Are we going to, etc., etc., etc.? There's all kinds of choices that we make throughout the day, and most of them we don't consider very deeply. It's just A or B, and becomes a fairly simple choice. Biblical perspective of this is Joshua 24:15. Joshua's in front of all of Israel at that time, and it's a very classic statement that most people would know about. And he's talking to the whole tribes of Israel, and he says, today in the sight of your Lord, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether it is the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the Euphrates River, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are dwelling and living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It's very classic, and that choose who you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We even actually have that on a doormat coming in to the house. So any visitors coming in, they would read that. So there's two words for God used in this. The one is the gods of your father and the gods of the Amorites. And that word, again, we use the interlinear Bible, which gives us a correlating number to the Strong's Concordance. So if you followed the channel, you know I'm about to give you a number, and you can go look and you can look at the definition. So the first gods that is talking about, gods of your father, gods of the Amorites, is 430, and that is Elohim in the plural form. In the plural form, that can just mean like idol gods, or if you think of Greek, all the Greek gods that they had. I used to know the number of how many they had, and I forgot that a long time ago. But so Elohim itself is a name of God, but the plural form can be used in just gods with a lowercase g. Then when he says, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord," that word there is Jehovah into the Greek, but Yahweh in Hebrew, and that number is 3068, and that is the most sacred name for God, is Yahweh. So if you go to Deuteronomy 7:6, it says that God chose Israel to be his personal possession. Over all the different races on the earth, God chose the people of Israel to be his, quote, his people. Which, when you go to the New Testament, if you study it, which we may sometime, we are grafted into that whole line of people. So here, God chose Israel. If you go to Psalms 135:4, the same thing. God, and the words here is the 3068. Chose Jacob and Israel. Jacob and Israel, they're the same. And then if you go in the New Testament, there is where Jesus had the 12 disciples together, and he goes to them and he said, "Look, you didn't choose me, but I chose you." And so just some interesting concepts of God and Jesus choosing, and then people themselves, who you serve. Well, as for me and my house, we will serve Jehovah. So I'm bringing that up, but that's not what started the whole thinking on choice and that. I mean, have you ever really thought about the choices that you make and why you choose those things over something else? So a lot of times, in a lot of choices that we make throughout the day, they're just, that simple A or B choice, and the consequences of that choice are minimal, and unless it's choose to eat or choose not to eat. Then if you like to eat, choosing not to eat is a big deal. So, but there's all kinds of things every day that we look at, and we make choices on that affect our lives a little more deeply than just, hey, what am I going to eat? And it's one of those scenarios that started me thinking about this in the path that we choose, and how sometimes I like to call it, we just float through life and perhaps don't even put a lot of thought into our choices, but we just kind of float along, and it was like, well, I'm going to do this. And we don't really give a lot of thought. We don't really contemplate what's going to happen. A friend of mine in college always used to say that what you say and what you do, it all has consequences, and it's best to figure out those consequences before you decide to do something. That's my paraphrase of what he said. So there's lots of things that we make choices on that can make a significant impact on our lives, the lives of our family, the lives of our family to be, etc. No matter where you're at right now in your life, let's say you're 50 years old and you're like, you've done your career, you're doing a career in that, but at the beginning of that career, did you ever stop and think, well, this is what I really want to do, or am I doing that because I can make the most money? Is this going to impact my family presently, or how is it going to affect my family in the future, and how that plays out in life? So today it's more about life and life choices. Some that we make are colleges. What college am I going to? What university am I going to go to? What degree am I going to go after? And how is that going to impact my future? Am I going to get a degree that when I get done I'm not going to be able to do much with it, or am I going to pursue this because I can make the most money, etc.? And sometimes we don't really think about the end result. What about work? Maybe you're not going to go to college. Maybe it's work. Here's a good example of, like, am I going to join the family business? Am I going to work and do the things that perhaps my grandfather did, my father did, and now I'm going to do? Is it just a normal progression, or have you really sat and thought, what should I do? Should I do this, or should I be doing something else? And here's a side road on that with myself. My father died when I was 6 years old. He had a business with one of my uncles. They were in construction. They were carpenters, and they were in construction. Well, my dad died when I was 6, so that changed the course of our family, and perhaps even me, because, well, I know it did me, because had my dad lived and been around, a good possibility that I would have just joined the family business and been in construction, building houses or whatever, and that would have been my life and my career. Not one thing wrong with that, but that didn't happen. My dad died, and I couldn't go into the family business. There was none. So your family business in that, is that someplace that you should be? Have you ever thought about that? What about if you go into marketing, or you go to work in a factory and you want to just move up into the factory, or on and on. Do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to be a doctor? What do I want to do? And sometimes you give real thought to that, but I know people also who have gone into the medical field because their family was in medical. So it just seemed like a normal thing for them because that's what they knew. But not everybody is suited for medical field. Here's another big question. Follow God or not follow God? There's a real choice there. Most people who would be listening to this, most people who have access to this have at some point made a choice about God. Whether that is to follow Him, serve Him, learn from Him, and take that to the world, regardless of the work or the employment, or no, I'm not going to do that. I don't believe that. That's not for me. Lots of things like that I've heard people say over the time, and even to the origins of the universe. We're going to do a whole podcast on that, so I'm not going to really cover anything on that here. But do you believe the Bible? Do you believe God? Do you believe man and their ideas and their schemes? Here's another one: gifts of the Spirit. Have you ever thought of those? I grew up in a church that basically said that the gifts of the Spirit were for the first century church, and once the first century church passed and we went into the second century church, that we no longer needed that, and that those gifts of the Spirit passed away. I always questioned that, and I always thought that's really odd that God made such an impact in the world with the gifts that He poured out on the first century church to just say, all right, that's good, we got it. It's like a little campfire. We got the light going, we got the flame going, and now we don't need that anymore. And that always struck me as kind of odd, and later in life I learned that that's a thought of man who doesn't want to look at God and who He is and what He wants for people. But that's a choice that you have to make here and there, and decide for yourself. Sometimes we don't even think about that. We do it very offhandedly, just like passing, I don't believe that, and go on, and you never really think about it or pursue, well, what is this? What should I really be concerned about with this? Is this something that is really important and I need to follow? So what started me down this path was, I'm driving home from work, and some things in college popped into my head. I have no idea where it came from. That was a lot of years ago. But I went to a Christian liberal arts college, university. There were, I would say, 2/3, 3/4 of the people who went there were Christians, believed in God, believed in Jesus, believed in salvation, and a lot of people, even like myself, who it was our church conference college, so we went there. But there was a good number of people who came to the college because it was good academically, depending on what you wanted to do, and some came for sports and various other reasons who weren't Christians. There was an individual, and honestly, I don't remember his name. I remember his face. I remember the whole thing like it was yesterday, but I don't remember his name. I would have to look into my yearbook, but we're going to call him Bob. So Bob went to, at that time, Huntington College, and he was there. I don't remember whether he transferred in like I did or if he'd been there for the whole 4 years. So in the time that he was there, he actually had a real salvation in coming to the knowledge of Jesus, who Jesus was. He accepted Christ. He went on to study and had the same degree I did, Bible and religion. And I remember us sitting around and talking, and I remember the question came up, are you going to be a pastor in United Brethren Church of Christ, which was our church conference and college conference, or what were you going to do? And he said something that I thought was somewhat profound, but when you're young, a lot of times you hear profound things, and instead of thinking about it and dwelling on it or really coming to a conclusion on the thought process of what that really means, you just kind of went, oh wow, it's cool. But as I was driving, Bob came into my mind, and his answer to that was, no, I'm not going to go to United Brethren Church of Christ and be a pastor. I'm going back to the United Methodist Church, because the church that I grew up in, which was that denomination, those people need to know that they're not saved. And at the time I went, wow, that's interesting, and wow. And I don't know why this popped into my head, but it did. And that made me then start thinking about, so that was a choice that he had thought through, and he came to the conclusion that his choice for his life and what God wanted him to do was to go back and take the gospel to the United Methodist Church. I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about what I have done in my life. You know, I started out working in Campus Life, which works with high school age individuals. I went from there to I became a paramedic, a fireman, 25 years career. Before the middle of that career, I went back to school. I became a physician assistant. So my whole focus at that point was the medical field. So I started thinking about that, and what a profound, now thinking back on Bob and his choice, that it was a very thought through choice and answer. It was not, hey, I don't know, I'm going to do this. And I think sometimes we get into patterns where we just kind of float. Whatever comes along, that's what I'll do. I really liked medical. I excelled in medical things, science, and that. I have a very questioning mind. I don't accept things just because an organization or someone tells me, oh, well, this is the way it should be. I'm like, I have this practicality thing, and there's something here that doesn't sound right. I'll go search it out and figure out what I believe about that thing. So the medical came very easy for me, still is fairly easy for me. I still question a lot, and I'm going through this whole thing and talking about Bob and his decision, and I'm thinking, well, I went to school, and my first degree was in Bible and religion, and my initial plan was to go be a pastor in the conference. But my senior year, I remember having the thought and the consideration that I'm not sure that a church board and I would get along, because back then, and maybe still some today, if you talk to my kids, my wife, I was very black and white. No, that's a gray area. You pick a side, because there's no gray. You don't get gray. You get black and white. And a lot of times you have to be more gentle and not necessarily give in to something you believe, but you have to be more willing to, like, well, let's work on this and get this because this is important and whatever, and with a black and white understanding, you're gonna butt heads. I know that because that's the way I have been. So, but I'm thinking back now and thinking, did I really think that through? Was that a real good choice? Did I choose correctly? Which then took me down 40 years of working in EMS and medical. And now, frankly, I'm looking back and going, did I really think this through? Did I really make the right choice? And what kind of also kicked that into another level is the studying and the podcasting that I'm doing now is kind of brought a new life to the Word of God, the meaning. When you study something and you've studied it for a while, and then to go back and restudy it and go, whoa, what? Wait, I never saw that before. And you learn something new. There's a new excitement about the Word of God and God's things and those things. So the reason I wanted to talk about choice is because I look back now and go, did I make the right choice? And in discussing this with someone, they said, well, you took care of your family, you helped a lot of people, you've done good things in that, so you can't just say that was a waste. And it's not, is that a waste because I did good things, but could I have done better things and could I have done more God things? And should I have been doing more God things? So I don't have that answer, but it's posing a question which is also stimulating increasing study and increasing desire to do more with and for God than ever before. So the whole process of this, what I'm trying to convey to you is, what choices do you have in front of you? Think about those choices. Look at, if I go here, this will happen. If I go here, this will happen. If I go straight ahead, this will happen. What is the best way, best path for me to go? You know, the Bible talks about God being a lamp unto our feet. That means He will direct our paths. He will direct our feet to go the right way. But you have to involve Him in those decisions. If you're just making those decisions because they're easy, because, I don't see anything else, those kinds of things, then maybe you need to back up and go, hey God, I got 3 forks in the road here. What do you want me to do? So think about the choices that you make every day. Some of them are menial, don't mean anything, but some of them could make a great difference in your life and your impact on other people's lives around you, who you work with, who you may not even know. So this is going to conclude episode 6 of the thedad77. If you want to contact me, you can leave messages on the podcast. Also, if you go to thedad77 at gmail.com, you can also email me questions, and there's no capital letters in the email. thedad77 at gmail.com. Till next time, make the right choice.